It was so great talking to Joanne Strauss to see how she's coping, with the lockdown. See that you are keeping healthy and happy. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked havoc globally and changed life as we know it for most people, especially the vulnerable. But there has been an outpouring of support for South Africa's most vulnerable during this extended lockdown period in the form of feeding schemes and food packages. Now, food entrepreneur and restaurant owner Miles Kubheka has never shied away from helping those in need and is a big believer in giving back to the community you came from. He joins us this morning to tell us about how he's helping to feed those in need during the lockdown. A very good morning to you, Mr. Kubheka. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You've been involved in feeding schemes before, right? And now you're helping to feed communities during this pandemic. Why was starting this initiative so important to you?
So I run a food accelerator called Wakanda, and I work with amazing entrepreneurs in the food space, guys who are doing food tech, alternative protein, nutrition, and that kind of thing. And when you work with bright young entrepreneurs, often the sum of the parts are greater than the whole. And when we saw COVID coming, we thought, most of our businesses, including particularly the entrepreneurs' businesses, we're going to be impacted by this. So instead of standing by and watching, I was blown away as to how many of the entrepreneurs said, you know what, we want to be part of the solution. Yes, we're not going to have an income for the next foreseeable future, especially being in the food industry, but we don't want to stand by. We want to be part of the solution, and they wanted to help fix the problem.
And then are they volunteering their time and their expertise?
I'm blown away.
Wow.
Volunteer time, expertise, and of course, it's a tough time. You have to be essential services, so we obviously followed all the right protocols. We are essential services, and as you can understand, people in the food business, chefs and so forth, are the best equipped because
Yes.
we taught health and safety from the beginning. So after we got our rights accreditation, we went out and we just started becoming part of the solution. We started cooking. But the biggest thing for me was to understand what the actual problem was in the communities.
Yes.
Because there's already a lot of charity guys doing the charity stuff. We didn't want to do charity because I think there's experts for that. But we wanted to figure out how to solve the food issue. And in most townships particularly, it's an access thing. When there's a lockdown, all of a sudden the channels that would normally distribute food don't work anymore because of the shutdown. So some of the quarter places and so forth have, they're not obviously selling food, which means there's a huge percent of the population that was getting food under normal circumstances that is now not getting the food.
And that's very true, especially the access part of it. I mean, we reported most recently that, especially with school initiatives, the feeding schemes at schools, that they're no longer running. So the children, some of them, that's the only kind of access they have to food. So what you're doing is very essential. But which communities are you targeting specifically?
So we've worked in Diepsloot, in Alex, in Denver, in downtown Johannesburg. And the biggest thing, to your point, it has been about access. There's unintended consequences of a lockdown. So places like spaza shops, while they might have the certificate to trade because they are an essential service, but the problem is that most of them are closed because they have never had the ability to print that certificate because the print shops or the internet shops are shut down because they are not essential services.
Yes.
But before you know it, an unintended consequence has an impact of a whole broad community not getting food. And so those are the things that we are essentially solving for.
And then how long will it go on for? As we move on to different levels, do you then relax a little bit, or are you planning on continuing even beyond the lockdown period?
You see, I think the focus will differ. As I said to you, we don't believe we're doing a charity drive. This is about not the poor necessarily. This is about the poorly paid. These are the people who would have had a piece job, the shoe fixer at the corner, the guys who, have all these small businesses that keep the township going, but can't do that anymore because of the lockdown. So these guys would have had money to sustain themselves daily because they do these kind of jobs, and now they can't because obviously the situation. So our intent is to look at how to fix problems sustainably. Otherwise, we keep coming back to doing the same thing.
Yes.
And so to answer your question, it will differ in terms of our focus over as the phases go of the lockdown.
I mean, I'm happy that you are using your expertise and, you know, to a certain extent, your privilege to lend a helping hand, because even yesterday, our president was saying, you know, it's time for people to start acting on the plight of the poor, to kind of help them, you know, especially during this pandemic, to kind of create this sense of fairness and a just country. So what you guys are doing is absolutely that. But then for some of us at home, you know, who want to also be a part of this change, how can people get involved and donate to this feeding initiative? Are you accepting any donations at all?
Yes, we've been blessed because we are working with some of the some great partners like SA Harvest, Pick and Pay, and Liberty. So if you do want to take part and make a change yourself, you can. I'll furnish you guys with the details. So you can do a donation to SA Harvest, who have been phenomenal in making sure the food gets distributed to the relevant communities. Plus, they are an NPO, so they have all the relevant paperwork to make sure that your money is going to the right place.
Miles Kubheka, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You are doing incredible work and we salute you. Please have yourself a fantastic morning further.
Thank you, and you too.
Now, Miles Kubheka is just another one of those admirable individuals who are making a difference in their community.